It is difficult to remember all this, but such a life hardened me. I do not regret anything, and I do not take offense at anyone. I was drafted into the army in 1939. I did not see the Finnish War because while we were being trained in the Caucasus, it had already ended and the Great Patriotic War had begun. But I did not get to the front right away. First, we were sent to the war in Iran. The Iranian operation, or the Anglo-Soviet invasion of Iran, lasted from the 25th of August to the 17th of September 1941. Although the Iranian war was short, we stayed there until 1942. Then there was training. I was a mortar man and I had a baptism of fire in the Battle of Kursk. Before the offensive maneuver of the army, I was in artillery reconnaissance. When we were brought to the regiment, I was left alone. The commander asked me, "Where do you want me to send you?" And I replied, "Wherever you send me, there I will give them hell." I'll tell you how we were taken to the frontline intelligence in order to go behind enemy lines to scout for valuable information. That day, the officers arrived and the entire personnel was lined up. They selected only excellent students in combat and political training. The reconnaissance commanders came up and said that they needed those who went AWOL and spent some time in the brig, a military prison. "We are told that we need brave and desperate guys to go behind enemy lines," they said. I did not make the cut. In artillery reconnaissance, the matter is different. There is an ordinary pillbox. The gun itself is located far in our rear, and the soldiers cannot see where their shell hit. This is what artillery reconnaissance is for. The gun fires, and reconnaissance corrects the fire, where to turn and by how many degrees. If they hit the target, then it's the job well done, and they continue to fire where we tell them. There were many comrades who died in the war. Once a loading soldier was wounded, and that was my specialty, loading. The main thing is that as soon as they came out onto the path, there was a light bang, and the first number was wounded. There were 3 people in the mortar crew. We went further, reached the ravine and stopped. The major came up to me and asked if I would go to attack the pillbox with nothing but the rifle. I said yes. And here we were running with comrades, and the major was badly wounded. We dragged him away, handed him over to the nurses, and ran further. Our T-34 tank was driving nearby. We went to it, and they put us on the tank. We reached and crushed the pillbox. That day, 91 Germans were taken prisoner. After I was wounded in the Battle of Kursk, they treated me for a very long time. Then it was possible to make a transfer from the hospital, so my foster mother agreed, and they transferred me to Kirov. Once I was going to a grocery shop and met an old friend. He told me that he would not go to the front again. I asked if he was commissioned. "No," he said, "I have some connections and they won't send me again." That is how I lost a friend, not in the battles on the front line, but at home. While I was in the Kirov hospital, my mother found out that there was a school for a self-propelled artillery regiment and said, "Go and get a specialization." I didn't want to join a tank regiment, I saw how the tanks were burning all the time. But I graduated from the school and they gave us a car. We drove to Gorky. There we slapped together a crew and they transferred us to the tank troops, then to Moscow and again to the front to beat the enemy. Now I have a lot of holidays, infantry, artillery, and tank troops, and I celebrate everything. Everything happened in the war. Hunger, cold. It happened that we ate only crackers for 3 or 4 days. There were no battles sometimes, only a neutral zone, no man's land. And one day there was a dead horse lying in the field. So the soldiers tried to crawl up to it, and the Germans constantly opened fire on them. Apparently they thought it was reconnaissance. And when they realized that we were just hungry, they stopped shooting at us. So the guys cut off a piece of the horse, We cooked broth from horse meat, and some lucky ones even got a small piece of the meat. This is how we lived. We were told that the food train had been bombed, and then it turned out that our own people were stealing the food. We used to sleep right in the snow, and in the rain, we just passed out, not noticing anything. By the way, my cooking skills were very useful at the front. They even arranged a small test for me. They called and said, "Chop the onion." So I did, very quickly and neatly. When they saw such acrobatics, the people were shocked. So in between battles, I also cooked food for the soldiers. And in Berlin, there was an interesting moment. Then they stopped giving us uniforms. And you know, when you fight, it wears out, burns, and becomes unusable. So you come to the foreman, ask for a new one, and he says, "Tomorrow they will kill you, so why issue a new one?" And we walked around like this. Either the bottom or the top was civilian. The main thing was that we couldn't take off the helmet so that we wouldn't be confused with anyone. So right in Berlin, I saw the end of the war on the 2nd of May 1945 with the rank of senior sergeant. I didn't try to become some big honcho. On that very day, we were taken to the Reichstag. We had an order: do not bomb, do not shoot, and for looting, the punishment was execution. We rolled our eyes, our hair stood on end. How so? Were the Germans our guests or something, that we should treat them like that? But the order was carried out. Not a single cannon shot was fired at the Reichstag by our army. We fired from machine guns in the basement and on the first floor. There were no fights on the other floors. For 3 days we stood in front of the building trying to storm it, and on the third day the Germans themselves threw out the white flag and went out to surrender. All the bombing of Berlin was carried out by the Allies. They simply destroyed the whole city. In general, there was a lot of injustice in the war. On the 30th of April 1945, we were told at 3 or 4 in the afternoon that our Vyatka boy hoisted the banner on the Reichstag, and the next day everything changed and others became heroes. During the assault on the Reichstag, there were 5 banners, and the plan was this: to hoist at least one. On each banner was written the number of the military unit. And it so happened that it was the ordinary scout Grigory Bulatov who first hoisted it, but not on the highest point because there was serious shelling at the top. Bulatov did not receive any honors or awards for this. He died in Slobodsky, Kirov region, an unsung hero, because then he was ordered to keep silent about this, although there is now a chronicle and a book about Bulatov. On the night of the 9th of May 1945, I was on duty with a friend. We were walking around and suddenly they began shooting signal rockets in the forest. Green, red, white. The shooting started, everyone was screaming, but we couldn't understand anything. What to do? Run to the lieutenant? Raise the alarm or something? The lieutenant himself rushed to the headquarters where he was informed that the war was over. This is how we celebrated the victory. A little later, a lieutenant came up to me and told me to urgently run to the headquarters of the regiment. They said whoever participated in the battles for Berlin was entitled to the Order of the Red Star. I refused it. After all, I didn't fight for medals and orders. I didn't need them. I went to the front to drive the enemy from my land. I have only a few awards: the Order of the Patriotic War of the 2nd degree, the medals for military merit, and for the capture of Berlin. There are no awards for the Caucasus and Poland. Then they began to send the soldiers home. The echelons were driven through Poland by the Poles, but several echelons disappeared with our soldiers. Rumors quickly spread about this, and the rest of the echelons were already being transported by the Germans. They delivered us to Bug, a town in Ukraine, and then we got home. In civilian life, I met my wife, then 2 sons and grandchildren were born. They often come to me. My work experience is 56 years, This is without war. It was only in 1971 that I quit my job at the Fileca plant and worked there as a lathe operator. Now I have one dream, to live to see the 76th anniversary of the victory and raise a glass for it.